Welcome, everyone. I'm Betsy Cook, a member of the Living Democracy Engaging Citizen Group, who is putting on this forum for you tonight. Welcome to the 2024 Candidate Forum, providing an opportunity to meet your candidates and hear from them and find out who's running in the November races. We hope that this will provide you with the information you need to make an educated decision on Election Day or before. The 2024 Candidate Forum, as I said, is brought to you by Living Democracy Engaging Citizens. I'm a member of that group. It's a nonpartisan, local community group in the Mid-Ohio Valley. And our mission is to inform and educate the Mid-Ohio Valley about how our government works at the local, state, and federal level, and how citizens can become involved in our democracy so that we can make our democracy work for us. We meet the third Wednesday, little advertisement here, of each month at the Washington County Public Library on 5th Street, 2:30. So come on and join us if you want to and find out about us. I am so excited to see all the people out there that have started their voting plan. Part of our voting plan needs to be learning about our candidates that are running so we can make an informed decision. I'm asking, have you checked your registration? If not, the last day to register to vote for the November 5th election is Monday, October 7th. So check and see, make sure you're registered. You know, sometimes they purge voters and we don't want to be among that group. Early voting starts Tuesday, October 8th at the Board of Election office. So if you like to vote early, which is something I do, then you can start October 8th. And you can look on the website for the Board of Elections and see their hours and when you can go and vote early. If you want to vote by mail, you have to get the absentee ballot request form. We have some out at the registration table, so if you need one of those, you can check with them. Or you can call the Board of Elections and get the registration form, or you can go on their website and download the registration form and then mail it in. And of course, Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th, so you need to verify where your polling place is, and then you can go vote on Tuesday, November 5th. Okay, again, welcome. And this forum, as I said, is sponsored by the Living Democracy Engaging Citizens, and I'll explain the format for tonight and our procedures. Tonight's forum includes an opening statement, and the person will have 2 minutes to make an opening statement, the candidate. We'll have questions from you, the audience, from our Living Democracy Engaging Citizen Group, and then we were very lucky to get questions from the Warren High School Environmental Club. So we're very excited to have some questions from them for our candidates, so we'll be sharing those. And as I said, candidates will have 2 minutes for the opening statement and then 1.5 minutes to answer the questions that we ask them. And I'll be reading the questions in a few minutes. I think everyone got a card as they came in, and you could put down a question that you might have, and you can pass them to the aisle, and we'll have members of our group collect those. And then we're going to put them into piles of, okay, this is for the 6th District U.S. House, and this is for the Washington County Recorder, and so forth, so that we can use those questions then as each candidate comes forward to answer those questions. We have timekeepers down front here, and they will indicate to the speakers when they have 30 seconds remaining. Show us our yellow sign. That means they have 30 seconds of the 2 minutes or the 1.5 minutes remaining. And then when it gets to the time, we'll have the red card to go up, and then the candidates will be able to see that their time is up, and we'll have to move on. So audience members, and I need to do this too, we've got to turn off our cell phones. I didn't turn mine off yet. Okay, so turn off our cell phones, and we're asking that you remain quiet during the forum. No clapping, cheering, and all that kind of stuff. Just give us a smile and a little wave if you want. And then we're going to be taking questions, as I said, from the audience. So fill your cards out and you can pass them to one of the aisles, and our people will come down and collect them, and they'll be putting them in. Or raise your hand if no one's come to get your question, and we'll be there. All the questions will be reviewed by the panel to make sure that they're questions for that candidate particular office, and if they're related to the office, and then if they're duplicate questions, they can kind of set those aside. And we want to cover a lot of topics, so we're going to keep it moving here. Does anyone from the audience have any questions? And you want to start passing your cards over. If you have cards, raise it up or something, and Annette or one of the members will come and get those. Now, we were going to start with our first office was going to be the U.S. House of Representatives, District 6, but... He's here. Huh? He's here. He's here? Yes. Oh, well, I was going to move on to the next candidate, but maybe we'll give him just a minute to get himself together, and there he is. Michael, you're great. Okay, can we get him a bottle of water, Joan or Mark or somebody, in case he needs that? So I was just telling everyone, Michael will have 2 minutes for an opening statement, and then you get a minute and a half to respond to questions, and those are our timekeepers there, so you can keep an eye as to how much time you have left. Okay, and let me introduce for the candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives, District 6, Michael Kripchak. And Michael, you have, as I said, 2 minutes to give us an opening statement, and then we'll have questions from the audience. Okay. We have questions from a local high school environmental group, okay, and we have questions from our group, the Living Democracy Group. So here we go. And there's the microphone there.
Who needs a microphone? All right. First of all, I wanted to thank you guys for coming out today. The biggest lesson that I've had since starting this campaign is that it's our volunteers and it's the people who are engaged by actually listening and taking the time to be involved in the democratic process, and that's the only reason why our democracy survives. My name is Michael Kripchak, and I want to start off by saying I believe in our country, I believe in our state, I believe in our district, and I truly believe our best days are ahead of us. My mission in Congress is singular: restore the American dream. That means getting a farm bill that works for our farmers. That means fighting back against this consolidation that's going on with our farmers right now in our state and across the country. That means rejuvenating our public education system. Public education is so vital to the maintaining of our democracy. Even back to our founding fathers, you found some people that thought it was useless, saying, who needs this? We just need workers. But others saw the importance to actually maintain this experiment of our country that they started. And primarily and most importantly, my mission is to get manufacturing back to our district, founding what I'm calling the 3MC, Mahoney Marietta Manufacturing Corridor. It grew out of what was initially we called the Marietta Project. And the focus of this is to do advanced materials manufacturing. There's no reason Ultium Cells and Intel should have to leave the state to get their refined materials that they need. And it's also focused on commercialization of fusion energy. That's how we get out of the struggle. That's 15 years away. Germany just said that they're doing $20 billion over 15 years into their fusion project. And it is unacceptable. Because as Americans, as America, as a country, we are the best. We are at our best when we are the frontier pushers and we are leading the way for the rest of the world. Because if we don't, someone else will. Again, thank you for coming out today.
Okay.
I want to ask the camera people, do you need me on mic for audio? Yes, you need me on mic for audio. Roger that.
Okay, do we have our questions from the audience? Joy?
I won't mess with it.
And we have questions from our group. Well, I'm going to start with one of the questions for our Living Democracy group as they get the audience questions down to me. So, Michael, the first question is, if elected, what committee assignments would you want, and why do you think those will be helpful to the people of our district?
So the first one that's a definite is the education, which I guess is now education and workforce. Shows you where their intents are. Education and workforce, and then the scientific and research committee. Now I know I've had people say to me, "Yeah, but those aren't the ones with the power." There's no way a freshman's going to get on appropriations. I mean, possibly as a freshman, I could get on the Armed Services Committee, but I don't see that happening either. And the reason I'm focused on them is it comes back to my opening statement about founding the Innovation District, the Manufacturing, Advanced Manufacturing District right here. And education, look, I understand that that's a long-term goal. My focus there is to get learning out of the classroom, into the community. It's to move away from teaching to the tests, which we've been doing for 25 years now, and it hasn't worked. Compared to the rest of the world, we keep falling behind. And it's bringing in something that we had at the Air Force Academy called the whole person concept. Emotional, mental, and physical maturity and fitness. And how that's going to help our district is, look, these jobs that I want to help create, union jobs, they don't require advanced degrees, but they do require advanced skills. That's why one of my main pushes is to get more support to our local trade schools. Again, we're falling behind in the world, and we have to stop acting like a pauper nation. We have to stop acting like a cheapskate nation.
Okay, thank you. I did want to say we would have had an opening statement from our Republican candidate, but our Republican candidate chose, we never heard from him after numerous invitations. So the Mr. Ruley, the 6th District U.S. representative for the Republicans, chose not to come, I guess. And so we're going to just continue sharing our questions with Mr. Kripchak, and wow, we've got a bunch of them, too,
okay.
So we're ready to go.
I hope I'm ready.
So this is from one of our high school students at the Environmental Club. Food waste is a national problem. How would this issue be addressed?
Ooh. You know, the issue with that is we have an American mentality here, where we say more, 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 more. You know, I would say the best way to address that is through education on food health and food safety. I just only found out like 2 months ago that the food pyramid is a total lie. Does anyone else know that? So yeah, for me, again, it comes down, a lot of my answers are going to come down to education. Yeah, it comes down to education and food health. You know, and I'm actually more concerned with what we put into our food. There's a lot of treatments that we do in our food chain where we can't export to other countries. Like the EU is cut off from a lot of our products because we don't meet those standards. So when it comes to food health, yes, we have food waste. I'm definitely open for suggestions on how to fix that. But I'm mainly focused on helping our farmers and getting our food chain to work more for us.
One of our audience participants would like a little more information on the Farm Bill. Do you have some information you could share with that?
Yeah, most directly from talking to farmers over the last few months, one of the things I kept hearing again and again is how they're having a hard time handing down their farm to their next of kin. So if I was in Congress these last 5 months, my main goal was going to be to get a farmstead exemption to if you have a farm and you're handing it down within your family. Because time and again, they say, we can't pay the taxes. Our kids can't pay the taxes. We can't get them the farm. And I hear time and again that their family's getting out of farming, they're selling their land, and this is a national security risk. I also would like to focus on getting more funding into doing research for sustainable farming. I believe Monsanto or Bayer Monsanto, whatever they're called now, they have too much control over our food chain. Right? Farmers don't own the seeds that they plant anymore. On larger farms, they can't even repair their own equipment. So it would be, I mean, it'd be great if we get that ruling overturned. I think that was a judge in Indiana that made that decision. But I think another way to combat that is to get funding into research and development for more sustainable farming, more sustainable seed strains that then have publicly available IP, so that you're not paying some corporation just to do what Mother Nature intended with seeds. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Here's a question from the audience. As a 17-year resident of Marietta, my husband and I have lived in many other states and 2 other small Ohio towns. As my husband nears retirement and we could choose many other places to move, please give me your reasons why to stay in Southeast Ohio.
Because we're going to start having a booming economy in the next 5 to 10 years. I was just talking with someone out in Monroe County this last week. Forgive me, I forget the name of the town, but they have a green tech company going in there. And he explained to me how he's been working there for 7 years, and he said over the last 5 years, it's been awesome to see how the downtown getting rebuilt. Younger families moving into the area, actually getting wealth and prosperity to their local community. And ultimately, when I say to restore the American dream, it's getting more money into people's pockets. And what's that mean for me? It means get our local economy circulating again. That's how we push back against corporatism, because capitalism's amazing. It's corporatism is our problem. And we've been here before as a country, right, where corporations had too much power. So my pitch to them would be that you're going to be in an area with a burgeoning, growing tech center, bringing lively downtowns again, while protecting our natural resources.
Okay, thank you. I thought this was a good question, Mr. Kripchak. Have you had the opportunity to debate the issues with your opponent?
No, I have not. And let me make this clear. We have tried. He goes on a radio show every Friday. I even got the host to say, let's do a debate on my show. I knew it would be 2v1 because it's a conservative radio show. And I said, I'm down for that. You could go to our websites and see who has more depth and understanding about what's facing our country right now. And I will tell you this, Kent Repository reporter Robert Wang asked me one day, he was like, so why haven't you debated your opponent Rulli? I was like, well, I think he's scared. He was like, well, what Rulli told me is that you sent him some dates and none of them fit his schedule. And I said, that's an outright lie, because we didn't send him a single date. When they asked for dates, what we did say was, we know your schedule's more limited, give us a time, give us a place, and I'll be there. And he decided the better course of action was to just make up some excuse, a story out of whole cloth. And what I'm saying to people on this front is, A, please vote for me. But then B, if you vote for him, just please don't complain about lying politicians, because that's what and who he is. And I wish that wasn't the truth. But again, making up stories whole cloth about why you're not debating. He's never debated a single one of his political opponents in his entire politics career.
Well, I would like to thank you, Mr. Kripchak, and everyone out to vote November 5th. So
November 5th.
You have heard, yes? Thank you very much.
Thank you guys again.
Sorry. Okay. Our next candidate, or next office, excuse me, is the Ohio Senate, 30th District. and that is Ari Faber. And Ari will come forward, and Ari, you have 2 minutes to, and you can be at the microphone there, 2 minutes to give us an opening statement, and then we'll start some questions and answers. So.
My name's Ari Faber, and I'm running for Ohio Senate in the 30th District because I believe it's time that we bring back the American dream of having a family and a work life to our people. We do this by investing in our infrastructure and creating union jobs, increasing access to health care, and decreasing the cost of food and groceries. Our region deserves modern roads and highways. When we focus on our infrastructure, we can create good-paying union jobs that provide a gateway into middle-class life for people. In Northwest Ohio, we're seeing one of the largest solar plants globally being built. In Central Ohio, Intel is investing $28 billion. We should be next, but in order to be more competitive, we must fix our roads, our bridges, and our highways. But you cannot work a job if you are sick or in pain and cannot see a doctor. Last year, over 600,000 Ohioans lost some form of Medicaid health care. Not because they were ineligible, but because of paperwork issues. It's time we cut the crap in Columbus and work to pass legislation such as House Bill 174, which would create the Ohio Health Care Plan and extend coverage to all Ohioans. Nobody should be forced to choose between putting food on the table or seeing a doctor. I support increasing SNAP benefits and making them able to be used at farmers markets statewide, increasing access to local fresh food, as well as supporting our farmers. It's time for real leadership in Columbus. It's time that we bring back opportunity to our people. Thank you.
Okay, Ari, we're going to have some questions from our audience, and as I mentioned, from some Warren High School students and from our group Living Democracy. We'll start with one from the audience. What can the state do to help communities increase affordable housing units?
So there's a lot that can be done for affordable housing, starting with allowing accessory dwelling units to be built, as well as like providing subsidies and whatnot for building these units. Doing so would create more housing and drive down the current cost of housing, as well as support local property owners rather than large housing conglomerates by renting out an apartment above their garage or a tiny home in their backyard.
Okay, thank you. This is from one of our Warren High School environmental students. According to the Environmental Defense Fund, 5 million people get water supplied from the Ohio River, which for years has topped the list of American waterways contaminated by industrial pollution for years. What will be done under your administration to help improve the drinking water quality?
We have the National Clean Water Act, but it is not doing enough to keep our people safe. We need a new Ohio Clean Water Act that would protect our people from the corporations that are polluting our waterways. We see it all the time with leaking wells in Noble County, here in Washington County, in Athens County. These wells are killing our fish, our other wildlife, and polluting our drinking water. Clean drinking water is someone that every American believes in. It's time that we make sure we are safe from the corporations and that we pursue action against these corporations that are caught polluting rather than letting them off the hook scot-free.
What is your background and a little about yourself?
I am a nonprofit professional in Athens. I graduated from Ohio University in 2019 with a bachelor's in psychology. I'm just a person that cares about other people. I see politics as being the most sustainable way to help others. Everybody should have access to basic necessities, healthcare, food, stable housing. There is no reason that anybody should be lacking those things. Yet in my job, I am faced with it every single day. I run a free meal program 3 days a week, and it is sickening and appalling to me that our friends and neighbors don't have enough to eat. I field phone calls just about every day from people. I'm about to be evicted. Can you do anything to help? My electric was turned off yesterday. Can you help with that? And it's heartbreaking to have to tell people, we don't have the resources. There's no shelter in this area. But those are the conversations that I'm having every day, not because we're unable to provide for these things, but because it's not being prioritized by politicians in Columbus.
With school-related threats and violence again rising, what calls to action will you make to protect our students?
Parents, students, we're all worried. Every day, parents are terrified when they're sending their kids into schools. It's heartbreaking to witness that. It's heartbreaking to see kindergartners and their teachers with lollipops so that they can stay quiet during the active shooter drills. I would propose mandatory waiting times on the purchase of firearms that would delay the time from the point of purchase to the point of picking up the firearms. We know that 12 to 24 hours later, a lot of people facing a mental health crisis are no longer in a state of crisis.
What is your number one priority when elected to the Ohio Senate?
My top priority is making sure that our people are taken care of, making sure that we have access to good paying union jobs that you can support and build a family on.
Okay. Rural Appalachia, what are your plans to help eradicate food insecurity?
Yeah, this area has my heart. It's where I grew up, it's where I live, and I can't imagine myself living anywhere else. And seeing the things that I see every day absolutely breaks my heart for everybody here. I think we start by expanding SNAP benefits. We start by allowing them to be used at the farmers markets. We emphasize food rescue groups that are doing the work of eliminating food waste on a corporate scale. That food can be taken to various pantries as well as organizations that provide free cooked meals to people. And if it's too far gone, it is able to be given to people with farms to give to the farm animals.
Okay, and let me ask you this question also. Have you had the opportunity to debate the issues with your opponent?
I have not. My opponent declined being here tonight despite living here in Marietta. The only time we have been face-to-face was a week ago here in Marietta at the Chamber of Commerce luncheon.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ari.
Thank you.
And don't forget, November 5th, Election Day. Okay, we're going to go with our third office, which is the Ohio House of Representatives, District 94, and we have Wenda Sherrod from Athens area for the 6th District, Democratic candidate for the 6th District, 94th District. I'll get it right, sorry. Thank you, Wenda.
Okay, time starts. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm disappointed that my opponent declined this opportunity and another one in Athens County, but I'm here and I will continue to show up for all the people in our district. I'm well qualified for the position. I'm an attorney. I have a PhD in political science. I served as a domestic relations magistrate where I saw firsthand the societal problems that break up families. I also am a trained mediator, a former middle school and high school teacher, and I spent 10 years, more than 10 years, teaching business law at Ohio University. Yeah, I'm old. Voters deserve a choice. One-party state government does not do well for anybody. We've been severely gerrymandered. Laws have been passed that the majority of Ohioans disagree with. There's been lots of lawsuits challenging the constitutionality of various laws. School choice sounds good, but when you look at the details, you can't even use the voucher unless in the big cities, unless you have the thousands more it takes for the big city private school tuition. And taxpayers were told it would be $300 million. Now, the last figure I heard was $966 million, $100 million we're spending from taxpayer money for kids who are, most of whom were already in private schools that their parents could already afford. Electric bills. We are still paying on our electric bills for the Larry Householder scandal. I find it outrageous that the Republicans in Columbus have not joined with the Democrats to pass an anti-corruption law that would require refunds the wealth gap in our country has
Sorry.
No, I stop when she tells me.
Oh.
Oh. A different one.
Okay.
You're very powerful, Joan.
Okay. What do you think of the current plan to eradicate the state tax in Ohio?
I think you're speaking about the state income tax.
Yes, sorry.
And yes, I read the article in the Marietta Times about the meeting held about a week ago. My opponent introduced one of the Republican state representatives who was thinking of eradicating the state income tax. And the thing I'm listening for the most is, where's that money going to come from? Where's it going to come from? Income tax is one of the taxes that does not act regressively, meaning income tax, typically, if you have a lot of money, you're taxed more than if you don't have a lot of money. Sales tax, on the other hand, is typically regressive. Poor folks pay a larger percent of their income on sales tax than do rich folks in general. I was listening very carefully, and the only answer I heard or read in the Marietta Times was, we can make up the difference by drilling. One horizontal well under a state park will give us $1 billion or something like that. Excuse me, I don't have the exact numbers, but I didn't hear enough. I didn't hear enough to be happy with the plan. It looks to me like it might be one more way to help rich people be richer and poor people be poorer, even though that may not be the intention.
Okay, thank you. An estimated 300,000 households in Ohio lack access to reliable high-speed internet needed for doing homework, looking for work, and online educational or training programs, as well as entertainment. What would you do to address this problem?
I think we need some investigations. There is, last I heard, dark fiber in Meigs County, for instance. Dark fiber, I said, what's that? Dark fiber is the fiber optic cable that was maybe funded by government programs, yet it's dark because it was laid and not finished. Okay, we need some investigations as to why and where all the money went and how it was used. There's been some companies I've heard, well, I don't want to speak yet about that, but I think we need more investigation, and I do feel the lack of reliable internet access. During the pandemic, my son and daughter-in-law, who are college professors, were teaching remotely. They came to live with us for free childcare. Someone said, well, where did they get free childcare? Here, me. But occasionally their classes were cut because our internet died right in the middle of their class. And they would go to the community center or something to log in. And I was cut from a meeting I was having. I was in charge of the attorney panel for the Ohio Domestic Violence Network. I was leading that once a month. And one day, no warning, internet's cut. We need some investigation. We need some study to see where the money went and why it hasn't been used in the way we had hoped it would be used.
Okay. Are there any plans to implement more clean energy sources? Also, any plans to help inform public about environmental issues and how to help?
Any plans? I'm sure there's a lot of plans.
Do you have any?
Do I have any plans? Okay, that question. For that answer, I would defer to experts, for instance, with the Climate Reality Leadership Corps. About 7 years ago, I was accepted to a training program led by Al Gore, the Climate Reality Project. I went for 3 full days of training in Pittsburgh with 1,000 other people. That activity, that group continues to be active all over the world and has come up with some stellar ideas. There are all sorts of subgroups in that group of experts that have ideas for better energy sources. I heard one of the candidates who's not here today, this morning, talk about the Ohio River as possibly being a source of energy. That was interesting. So do I have any specific plans? No. Am I in touch with people who do? And do I want that explored? Yes.
Okay. The Republican candidate for the 94th House District of Ohio said last week that lithium can be extracted from brine. This is a dangerous and misleading comment. The technology involved in Germany concerns brine, saltwater, not brine waste. Brine waste is radioactive and contains dangerous chemicals and is being injected in high volumes in Washington County. Can you comment on these things?
Oh. I am not a scientist. That would be my husband, the career science teacher and scientist right over there. I am worried that we do have too much brine waste being injected into the ground in southeast Ohio. We are taking in brine waste from other states. We are taking in far more than our fair share. And back in the 70s, when injection wells were first thought up, it was, well, it's only a temporary solution, because when the brine waste goes down there, it's not contained. It can travel. It can travel. Now, as far as extracting lithium from brine waste, the work that's been done in Germany is not extracting lithium from brine waste. It's extracting lithium from brine. And that's different. As you said, the brine waste has a lot more in there, and I do not know enough about the science of how more difficult it would be, but I assume that radioactivity has to be dealt with. And I know that the Germany experiment is happening in almost an ordinary house. Would you want that much radioactivity in a house?
Yeah. If elected, what committee assignments would you want, and why do you think those would be helpful to the people of our district, your district?
I get asked a lot of questions like what would I do first and what committee assignments would I want. But I've been around enough to know a couple of things. One, politics is at its core relationships between people. I cannot go to Columbus and hope to accomplish any one thing alone. I must build those relationships with other people. I have to work with not only the House Democratic Caucus, but members of the House Republican Caucus, and see where my skills and experience and the needs of this district would have me best placed on committees.
And how will you work to improve the water, air, and health in communities that are located near polluting sites such as oil refineries, chemical plants, brine waste disposal places?
Water, air.
Would you like me to repeat that?
Oh, boy. I feel like I'm expected to be Superwoman. All of that. But, oops, don't fall off the stool, Wenda. Okay. We have laws on the books. We already have laws on the books about clean water, clean air, and clean health. Good health. We have laws that are not implemented ideally. One of the earlier candidates here stated it so well that there's people who have paperwork hassles even getting health insurance. I know with the injection wells, the problem there is we've got an agency, department charged with keeping us safe, but what does it take to actually get that agency to do what they're supposed to do? It's taken the work of citizen groups in this area that have done phenomenal work calling the attention of problems to the agency. I remember 30 years ago, or 35 years ago, brine was being spread on the roads. Remember that? As dust control. And they weren't allowed to spread it on blacktop. I took a picture with my 35mm camera of a brine truck spreading brine right on the road in front of my house. Enforcement. Better.
How do you plan to strengthen public education? The state is currently suing Columbus schools because due to lack of bus drivers, private school children aren't being given the services the state requires. But how will you strengthen public education? Do you have some plans for that?
Oh, yes. How many of you remember the DeRolf lawsuit? Yeah. What was that, 30 years ago, 35 years ago? Our state funding system for education was declared unconstitutional against the Ohio Constitution that requires a thorough and efficient system of education funding, of common schools, which is public schools. That's still not happening. It's been declared unconstitutional all those decades ago, and it's still not happening. In fact, when I talked to one superintendent of schools in the area, and I talked to more than one in this learning phase as a candidate, he told me that there was a bargain struck, Republicans and Democrats striking a bargain a year ago. Okay, we'll give your schools more funding if you allow the expansion of the EdChoice voucher program. There's shenanigans up there, and a lot of it's due to the gerrymandering, the severe gerrymandering that's happened. Please vote yes on issue 1. Do not be confused by the confusing ballot language. And if you want to dive into the weeds, I recommend reading the Ohio Supreme Court's decision. Or don't, you might get sick, that allowed the ballot language with a whole bunch of word shenanigans.
That was one of the questions our group asked is, well, why does the Ohio legislature continue to ignore the court decision that Ohio's school funding formula is unconstitutional? And what can we do about that? And you kind of answered that, but yeah, that's...
I did, and why does the Ohio legislature or the committee, the redistricting committee, continue to ignore 7 times being told that their maps were unconstitutional? Why did they continue to ignore that? Hey, my best qualification for serving in the legislature is not any of those degrees I have. It might be the fact I raised 3 teenagers.
What would you do to promote the growth of good-paying jobs in our district?
I thought you were only going to ask me 4 questions, Betsy.
Oh.
Okay, growth of good-paying jobs. What would I do? For one thing, we need our unions. We know from what happened in West Virginia when prevailing wage was done away with by the West Virginia legislature in 2016. 3 years later, a nonprofit group did a study, and contrary to what legislators said would happen when we got rid of prevailing wage, the wages for everybody went down, and injuries on the job went up. And there were other problems too. Things didn't get completed as quickly as they should. So I think we need to continue to allow our unions to strengthen. There are a lot of good union people out there. The unions have training programs. The unions have better, I had to remember the colors. The unions have the training programs. The unions have the way to get things done well. You come out ahead if you hire a union worker in many instances. So better jobs, unions can help lead the way to that.
Okay. Thank you, Wenda. Appreciate it. Wenda Scher, Democratic candidate for the 94th District. Okay, next on our agenda is our Democratic candidate for Washington County Recorder, Tracy Wright.
Thank you.
And Tracy has 2 minutes to give us an opening
I
statement.
won't need that, okay?
Okay.
As those that know me know, I don't like to give speeches or talk very much, but I will tell you this. I am a 44-year veteran of the Washington County Recorder's Office. This is my 8th term in the Recorder's Office. I currently serve on the Ohio Recorder's Legislative Committee, and we currently are working on laws that are conducive to real estate commerce. I serve on a subcommittee for fraudulent documents presented to recorders, and we are being very diligent with that subcommittee right now because of the amount of fraud that is taking place. I am very active in community events. I am a board member for EVE Incorporated. I'm a board member for the Washington Morgan County Community Action. I am a member of the American Legion Auxiliary Post 64 here in Marietta. I am also a Order of Eastern Star member, and I'm on the Ohio Farm Bureau. I'm honored that I have received the endorsements from Ann Block, the past president and Ohio Recorders Association and current Monroe County Recorder, the IBEW 972 here in Marietta, Laborer 639, OPSI of Belpre and Frontier Local Schools, and the Professional Surveyors of Washington County. I take great pride in the Recorder's Office, excuse me, and I want everybody to know that my staff and I are very professional, knowledgeable, and courteous. I am very grateful when a person stops in and says, "We just stopped to say hello because you all are so nice." That makes you feel good. So I appreciate all the support I have been giving during my tenure as recorder, and I hope that on November 5th, you will once again make the right choice for recorder and for Washington County. Thank you.
One of the biggest questions we got is, what does the county recorder do?
I tell everybody we're the best kept secret, and we really are. If you don't need us, nobody cares what they do. However, if you own land, I'm real important to you, okay? Because we record documents that pertain to land records. We also record power of attorney documents. Those are becoming very popular. We also record military discharges, which are very popular. Those are the top ones that I name. But there is a flyer that I put out, and it will tell you we do a lot of documents. So that's basically our job as land records. So, and we're very important to people.
And I think we already heard this, but what qualifications do you have to perform the duties of your job?
44 years of experience.
And what do you think is a way that you could improve the recorder office and job?
We progress while preserve, because we have to preserve the history we already have. In the meantime, I have to continue with what everybody's bringing in for us to continue with. We are digitized, we have websites, we are an e-recording office, several recorders' offices in the state e-record, which means a document can be sent to me through email, and if it meets our requirements, we are going to take it. So we don't have people coming into the office as much, which is kind of sad, but yet it's progression. You know, what do I do?
Yeah. I didn't know this, but I guess you enforce more than 1,000 sections of state law in the Ohio Revised Code. Could you elaborate, not on all 1,000 of them, but on a few of them, and highlighting experiences with maybe some less well-known sections?
I can tell you the real estate law is the main one we deal with, and that covers a lot. There's not just a deed that you're going to have come through the office. We get affidavit when a person is deceased, somebody's married, somebody passes away. How do you get that property into somebody else's name? There's a revised code that addresses that. There's many revised codes that we deal with on a daily basis, and mostly land records. But your oil and gas records, that's a big one that we dealt with several years ago during the Marcellus Shale action. I was very busy. I went from 9 title searchers a day in my office to 90, and that was a lot of work, but it was good. Not complaining.
I did want to ask you this question. Let's see, have you had an opportunity to debate your Republican counterpart for the Office of Recorder?
No, I have not.
That has not come up. And I forgot to ask you that, Wenda. Okay. What is your number one priority if you're, re-elected to the office of Washington County Recorder? What do you want to continue, or what is your number one?
Continuity in my office is a big thing. I currently have a big project going on, which we recently passed a Senate bill that's going to require it for all recorders in Ohio. That being that our records have to be online back to 1980. And right now my records are online from 1996 forward, and that project is currently being worked on to get all of those from 1980 to 1996 brought together, and it's a rather huge project. It's a big undertaking, but we are in the process of getting that done. But Ohio has passed that law, and I think it's effective in 2026 that it's mandatory that we have those online, and for everybody to be able to, because the pandemic caused a big problem with us where a lot of people could not do to do their deeds and stuff. So this will help eliminate that, because you can get all your records online.
So to finish this project that you have with the recording that lasts from 1980 on, digitizing it, is there money that is needed, and is that being made available to you, or is that something?
The new law that they just passed is going to provide money for that project. However, I had started that project thinking that originally that we would have to be online by 2025. I did not want to be left in the dark waiting for money, and so I went to my commissioners. They granted me the money, and that project's been ongoing for about 1.5 to 2 years.
Okay, working with the commissioners then to make that happen. Great. How realistic do you believe your chances are for being reelected in an Ohio gerrymandered county like Washington and is almost surely to be elected regardless of character, qualifications, or whatever. Do you believe that, or do you believe that you are going to be reelected?
Let's hope. That's all I can do at this point, I guess. But we are working real hard. I've got a great committee. We've put everything we can into it, just like we did the first time around, which I laugh because 32 years ago I ran opposed, and we put a lot into it then, and we're putting a lot into it now. So all I can do is ask everybody to get out there and vote for me. That's all I can do.
Here's one on the brine waste.
Oh.
Do the brine waste deposits records go through your office? Is any record of them in your office?
Not the brine waste. Are you talking about the storage tanks and that type of information? No, most of those are through the Ohio Department of Natural Resources.
Okay.
And there is a website. You can go on there and look at those. For those that
How
want
much
to.
waste is put into our...
I don't know all the details. Michael may be able to help you on that. I don't know as far as what is all on that website, but there is a website that gives you wells, waste, that type of stuff. So check out the ODNR website.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you very
You're
much.
welcome. You're more than welcome.
Tracy. Okay, I have to admit that I made a few errors in the beginning of the debate, or sorry, question and answer form, excuse me. I didn't give Michael or Ari the total amount of time that we were allotting for that. So I'm going to go back to you guys because I have more questions up here. And just see if we can answer a few more of our questions, because we have a little time here, because I wasn't calculating properly. So, Michael Kripchak, you remember, is our candidate for the Democratic candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives, 6th District. And so I have several questions here.
Okay.
On February 3rd, 2023, at 8:55 p.m., a train carried hazardous materials derailed in East Palestine, Ohio. Many people believe that the response to burning and hazardous waste was not appropriate, as it released pollutants into the atmosphere, potentially contributing to environmental concerns, including acid rain. If similar events occur in the future, will officials adopt a more cautious approach, and how might they do that?
Okay, so it has to be said, at least from the federal level, I remember DeWine came out the morning after the accident happened and said that Biden offered their full support and that they turned it down. And then it actually took until, it was the last week that they had to ask for an emergency declaration and help from FEMA, and then DeWine asked for an extension. And then when they said, no, you're not getting an extension, then he finally requested FEMA to come in and help. Look, so I actually had friends there that night, and they didn't know what was on that train, but Norfolk Southern knew what was on that train and didn't warn these guys to even wear their masks. So they're putting out this fire in the middle of the night and not even wearing this correct safety equipment. Look, this is just what happens when corporations have too much power. Right, from the federal government level, our hands are tied as to what the states want to allow us to do. It's about actually having robust contingencies in place and ready to go in cases of an emergency. And I was happy that the Ohio State House passed the rule saying you need at least two operators on a train that's a mile long. Congratulations, way to meet the bottom of the barrel when it comes to standards that we should be meeting. But yeah, it comes down to regulations and standards that need to be put in place. And it's hard to do with our current campaign finance laws.
Okay. Southeast Ohio needs passenger rail to connect to the rest of the country, as well as to the 21st century. How would you propose to address this in legislation, and what type of rail would you companion? Champion.
Yeah, I'm uncertain on that second part of that, but for one of the first parts, we need to give an Amtrak the reason to come and bring a rail line through our district, right? We can't have railways to nowhere. That's why it's so vitally important for us to get our cities back on their feet, for us to get manufacturing back here, because it's all about inducing investment from the private sector. So this is also leading into why one of my main initiatives is to get manufacturing back to our district, to build up our towns so that Amtrak is more likely to actually bring a train rail down our district. And then also on that front, we need a second Inflation Reduction Act, right? But it's an infrastructure act. We need a second infrastructure act. We are told time and time again that tax cuts are what's going to spur the tax base because investment trickle down, but trickle down never trickled down. Now, infrastructure investments do pay for themselves. The data is clear. It induces more trade. It increases opportunities for businesses to come into areas. That's why building out our infrastructure, I think, is key. And yes, one of our goals is for that to include passenger rail. And plus, like one of my main missions is to focus on working with surrounding congressional delegations, right? Because if we raise our tide, then it's going to raise all ships. And so it's about making those connections between Pittsburgh, Cleveland, down to West Virginia as well.
How do you feel about term limits for Congress?
Look, I get pushback on this one, right, because I become a dork and I start explaining things. Look, I'm fine with term limits, but like the scientist in me, you then have to ask yourself, what are the repercussions of this choice, right? What we're having in Ohio now is now someone's getting termed out of the Senate. Now they're just going to work in the House of Representatives in our state. So it just creates, it's just another merry-go-round. It's just you find ways around it. And then secondly, I asked myself, what's the constant? It's the unelected bureaucrats, the advisors. They're going to increase in power if your politicians are termed out. And then secondly, the money. Corporate America, like, again, you're never going to hear me say a greedy corporation. Their job is to make more money. That's their responsibility. They have a fiduciary responsibility to do so, but the government has to be there to protect the people. And if then your constant are the unelected bureaucrats and then the money that's able to be put into our system, who then gets more power? Our power is reduced. So I am in support of term limits, but I think it is a fool's errand and a mistake unless we also accompany that with campaign finance reform.
How do you propose to address academic deficiencies in Appalachia?
Actually get funding to our schools. Look, people don't get into educating K-12 because the pay is not there. I've spoken to several teachers that have had to sell their houses because they can't afford the payments anymore. Our teachers need funding, our teachers need support, and like voucher programs in certain situations, yes, I think they're necessary and useful when a student's needs can't be met. But universal voucher programs don't work. It's so important that whenever you're thinking about any of these things, go check to see if anywhere has done it or if anywhere else is doing it, and see how that program has resulted. And if you could come up with solutions to the problems they're having, that's great. But the systems that have been put in place, Arizona is a prime example of this, it doesn't work. Their state budget goes through the roof. Private schools end up raising prices, and so then students with families that can't afford those increased prices end up going back to public schools, which are then unfunded. But like my big thing, like I said, is moving away from teaching to the test. We got to get practical life skills back into our schools. We have to make trade school opportunities available to students. One of my big pushes I'd love to do, like I said, getting hands-on experience for kids. One of my things is getting civics out of the classroom into the community. Have our kids working with community organizations, working with volunteer groups so they learn what it actually means to help their communities thrive. It's leadership opportunities, mentorship opportunities, and it's practical life experience for them. Yeah. Oh, and then also, again, like I said, look elsewhere to see what's working around the world and try to incorporate those systems into ours. It's about adapting and overcoming.
Okay. What more should be done to mitigate the effects of climate change?
Oy vey. Okay. So look, first it has to be stated, climate change is real, it's happening, the science is settled. I would beg that you go to the library, get some books, and read them with an open mind, and be in awe of the intelligence and the ingenuity of the scientists and researchers that work in this field. They don't work in this field of global warming. They work in whatever their sect of environmental studies is, or statistical climatology, and then through the accumulation of data, we see that it's happening. So I beg that of you, because the only reason not to believe it is because of, you know, big oil money and the politicians that are paid off by them. The problem with Ohio is that we live in kind of a Goldilocks zone. It's not too windy, it's not too sunny. So this is why I'm adamant that we need to be the ones making the shovels. Big Wires Act is sitting there in Congress. It needs to get passed because we need the transmission lines to take things from like wind farms and solar farms and then deliver them to the current electrical grid that's in existence. And that's why one of my big pushes for materials is to use coal to make a sub-material called graphene, which is incredibly efficient at transmitting electricity. And one of the things I'm not happy about getting rid of our farmland and replacing with solar farms, but there's this process that people are using now. It's had a lot of success in Arizona called agrivoltaics. And it's a way to actually, instead of actually hurting the crops there, it can actually provide them shade from the sun, incredibly helpful with tomatoes, as also as keeping a lot more moisture into the ground. It's about finding compromise solutions and using our brains to figure out ways forward.
Okay, thank you.
And that doesn't include forcing battery-operated cars on everybody. We saw the failures of that. Is this something that we needed to start decades ago? Yes, but that's no excuse that we can't start now.
Okay, thank you very much. Michael Kripchak from the Democratic candidate for the 6th U.S. House 6th District. Thank you. And Ari Faber, the Ohio Senate candidate for the 30th District of Ohio. Have just a couple more questions to share with you. The city of Marietta has been steadily declining in population since the peak in 1990. What are your concerns about this population loss, and what is the legislature's role in addressing these concerns?
We live in one of the areas that is most rapidly aging, unfortunately. Our young people aren't motivated to stay here. They're not motivated to stay here because there is a lack of opportunity, because we can't get our politicians out of the exam room, because every day there is more and more government overstepping. In order to incentivize our young people to stay here, we have to allow them medical freedom. We have to invest in our infrastructure so that we are able to attract more jobs, so that we have to expand vocational schools and make it more accessible so that people can then get these good paying union jobs and stay right here locally rather than having to move into other areas that are not home to them.
Okay, thank you. Environmental scientists advocate the reduction of fracking due to the billions of gallons of water being taken from the Ohio River Valley, the challenges of disposal of the radioactive wastewater, and the risk of contamination of drinking water. Fracking is now allowed in Ohio state parks and wildlife refuges. What limits on fracking do you advocate for our state?
I think we start with holding people responsible that are currently responsible for the leaking wells that we're seeing across the state, including right here in our own backyards. Rather than giving them bailout after bailout after bailout, the most recent one being $1.3 million that you and I paid, so that what? A big oil and gas guy can make more money? Because they haven't made enough record-breaking profits in this quarter yet.
Okay. There's an amendment on the ballot, issue 1. Politicians with citizens to end, or replace politicians with citizens to end the gerrymandering of our districts. The current Secretary of State has changed the language in this bill to make it appear that citizens can gerrymander the districts, even though the amendment establishes a nonpartisan commission with equal numbers of Democrats, Republicans, and Independents. As a state senator, how would you prevent such language switching in the future?
I think that's difficult to do in the legislative branch. We see that being set by the Secretary of State and then confirmed by the current Ohio Supreme Court. I think this emphasizes the importance of learning about who your Supreme Court justices are and voting for the ones that are going to stay as true to the ballot language as what is actually written and what Ohioans are actually voting on, rather than saying this creates gerrymandering or mandates gerrymandering.
Okay. What can the state do to help communities increase affordable housing units? Did I ask you that one before? Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay. If elected, what committee assignments would you want, and why do you think those will be helpful to the people of Ohio?
I think my first priority would be the Finance Committee. That's how you're able to appropriate dollars back to this region. Our region has not been invested in adequately in decades. We absolutely need to bring back more federally and state appropriated dollars into our region to bolster our infrastructure, to create jobs and prosperity for everyone here.
Thank you. How do you feel about term limits for Congress and Senate?
I would support term limits for Congress and Senate, but that's not really much of something I can do at the state level.
Okay. How about in Ohio, term limits?
We do have some term limits. I'm absolutely supportive of those.
Okay, good. Let's see, I've got one more. Well, why does the Ohio legislature continue to ignore the court decision that Ohio's school funding formula is unconstitutional? And what are your plans to correct that?
I think we need to fully fund our public schools and ensure that public money is spent on public services, not private institutions. Private and charter schools are not held to the same standards that our public schools are. They don't have to take all students. They can pick and choose which students they will or will not accept. It is absolutely unconstitutional to be spending our public taxpayer funds on private schools that are allowed to discriminate.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ari. Ari Faber, candidate for Ohio Senate, District 30.